dragi forumaši, oprostite na svim ovim tehničkim problemima. So we are very happy to have you all with us tonight, despite all the technical difficulties that we're having. And it's our great pleasure to host Professor Valerio Massimo Minale as our tonight's guest. And perhaps Valentina would like to say a few extra words in greeting.
I just want to greet our dear guest, but I think he's not anymore the guest. Valerio is well known, I think, to many of us, and he's a professor of Roman law in Naples, a Napoli. E quindi possiamo cominciare, Valerio.
Yes,
Ti ringrazio molto perché sei venuto in questo periodo un po' casinato, specialmente perché in Italia è il Natale, quindi ti ringrazio molto. E prego.
Okay. I'm really glad. Good evening to everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Yes, of course, in Italy now are particular days, of course, because we have the Christmas on the 25th, but I am here with great pleasure. Every time I come here to Belgrade is a pleasure for me. I have good friends here in the Pravni faculty. I love the country and so on. Normally, during the autumn, I come here to the Pravni faculty to offer some lessons in institution of Roman law. And this year, I've been during the month of November. I've been here for 2 weeks during November. Well, this evening, I will speak in my terrible English because I'm not able to speak Serbian, of course. Je razume malo. So it's impossible to speak. I know a lot of words, but it's impossible to offer a university lesson, of course. This evening, I will speak about Byzantine law. So the period speaking about, I know that here in the university, in the Pravni faculty, has been instituted a course of Byzantine law. So I don't know how many students has decided to follow this course, this chair. But I am here also to how can I say, to offer you the possibility to understand something more about Byzantine law, because normally we speak about Roman law, and Roman law is quite 1 millennium, because is going from the foundation of the city of Rome. So really in the archaic period, for the tradition is 753 before Christ. And you know that the collapse of the Roman Empire is 476 after Christ. So it's quite several centuries, quite a millennium. Quite a millennium is also the history of Byzantine Empire, or Byzantine law, because I have to give you some space and chronological and space coordinates, because for the geographical coordinates for the space, you have this map in front of you. This is the Roman Empire during the time of Justinian. And you see that the red color, green color is the representation of the Byzantine Empire, or better, the east part of the Roman Empire, because you know that from a certain point, exactly starting from the sons of Theodosius, Arcadius, and Honorius, we have the split of the Roman Empire. From that point, the Roman Empire is split into sections, into big parts, east and west. And the heritage of the eastern part of the Roman Empire is the Byzantine one. So, speaking about Byzantine Empire, Byzantine history, Byzantine law, we have to consider, so, concerning the space, the east part of the Roman Empire. Concerning the time, we could start, this is a problem, We could start since Justinian, since the kingdom of Justinian. I was speaking, I've said that this is a problem. This is a problem when Byzantine Empire, Byzantine history, and of course Byzantine law started. This is a problem. It is an historiographical problem. When do you speak about history, you know, is it possible to say a lot of different things? We say we say in Italy, every history, also old history, is a contemporary history. Because if I speak about Roman Empire, if I speak about the past, I speak now about the past. So I put in my speech my idea, my consideration, my ideology. So if I speak about, for example, the time of the Byzantine Empire, of course, the moment, the starting moment of the Byzantine Empire, Byzantine history, could change concerning the historians, the scholars, the professors who are speaking about this kind of problem. For example, some scholars used to say that Byzantine history started with Constantine, with the period of Constantine, because Constantine was was the first Christian emperor. We could start by Justinian. We could start by Justinian, especially speaking about legal history, Byzantine law, because Justinian was the creator, of the Corpus Iuris, and now we are going deeply into the Corpus Iuris. You know that Georg Ostrogorsky. Georg Ostrogorsky is one of the most important Byzantologists of the history, and he was Russian, and after the revolution in 1970 came to Belgrade and founded a very important school of Byzantine history here in Belgrade. And he probably the history of Byzantine Empire of Georg Ostrogorsky is very famous, very important. Also in Italy we use this book, for example. First edition was in 1940. Okay. So it's a very old history, contemporary speaking. And he used to say that the Byzantine words was composed by three elements. Christian religion, of course, because it is a new Roman Empire. It is a Christian Roman Empire, no more pagan. Of course, Greek culture, or better, Hellenistic culture, because the language was Greek in the east part of the empire. And the third element is the structure of the state, Roman law. So Christian religion, Greek language, Greek culture, Roman law, Roman institution. This could be a good starting point to understand this kind of situation. So, about Justinian. You know that Justinian was born here in the Balkan, and the uncle of Justinian was a soldier. Justinus was a soldier, and he became emperor. Justinian became emperor immediately after his uncle, a period together with the uncle, anyway, in 527. Okay, we are in the 6th century, 527. And immediately, when he took the power, he started to think about the problem of law, Roman law, how to organize this heritage coming from late antiquity. During late antiquity, late antiquity, when we speak about late antiquity, we speak about Diocletian, the period of the 3rd century, 3rd and 4th century, so the dynasty of the Severians, the great military anarchy, Diocletian and Constantine, and the followers of Constantine. So this is the last period of the Roman Empire, okay? Late antiquity. During late antiquity, we have a main problem concerning history of law, legal history, Roman legal history. We have the presence of two big mass of sources, Iura and leges. Leges is, in English, laws, constitutions, imperial constitutions. Iura is more difficult. Iura is all the material coming from the Jurisprudence. So, all the material coming from the past, all the books, all the responsa, all the answers, all the sentences, all the material written coming from the past, but not belonging to the emperors. Iura. Especially books, for example, compositions. In the late antiquity, we have the coexistence of these two big sources, big group of sources, Iura and leges. Why it is a problem? It is a problem because with the Iura, concerning the Iura, there is the ius controversum. Ius controversum is, how can I say in English, is the possibility to have many solutions to the same problem. Okay? So there is a confusion concerning the ideas belonging to the jurists coming from the past. You can imagine this big material. Every century in history of Rome is characterized by the presence of some jurists. For example, the period of the Antonine period, for example. During the Antonine period, you know, Marcus Aurelius, Adrianus, Traianus Adrianus, Marcus Aurelius, Lucio Vero, and so very famous and important. It's the gold period of Rome, of the Roman Empire. We have the presence of many jurists, many. The most famous was Salvius Iulianus, for example. And Salvius Iulianus composed 90 books of digesta, so a lot of material. Just Salvius Iulianus. You can imagine many jurists, really a lot of material. Confusion. The same confusion was concerning the leges. Why? Because we had many emperors, many constitutions, of course, an accumulation of constitutions. Okay? So, at the time of Justinian, we have the presence of these two big groups of material, Iura and leges. Before to speak about the compilation, about the legislation promoted by Justinian, we have to remember two facts, always belonging to late antiquity, and always belonging to the problem of the Iura and the leges. Just a moment. We are coming from the French Revolution. So for us, it is normal to think about codification, about laws, about leges. When we go to the court, we ask for the solution of the problem with the application of a codification, with laws, articles of laws. For the Roman mind, it was different, because there is the There are the constitutions, imperial constitutions, but there are also the jura. The jura is, as for example, if I write a book about marriage, about a problem, this is not just my doctrine, this is not just my book, but this is jura. This book is going into the court. It is used to give a solution to a case. It is similar to a constitution. Have you understood the problem? Because it's difficult for us, because our mind is focused on the law. But the material coming from the pen of the jurists is also used into the courts to decide. For this reason, there is the problem to organize and to use also the jura, not just the leges. This is very important to understand, because this is the biggest problem. During the time belonging to late antiquity, we have two attempts in the west part of the empire and in the east part of the empire, two attempts to solve the problem. The first attempt was concerning Valentinianus III. Valentinianus III, an emperor of dark age, the empire is in a brutal economical, social crisis and so on. But there is the problem of the jura. So the idea promoted by Valentinianus III is called legge delle citazioni, law of the quotations. 426. This is the year. Law of the quotations. And the rule, this is the rule. In order to organize the quotation of the jurists into the courts, you have to use just 5 names. Just 5 jurists. 4 belonging to the period of the Severian dynasty, and the other one, Gaius. So, Papinianus, Ulpianus, Papinianus was the master of Ulpianus, Modestinus, and Paulus. 4 names. Plus Gaius. But Gaius was belonging not to the Severian time, but to the Antonine period. So, why these 5 names? It's strange. For example, we have not Salvius Iulianus. Salvius Iulianus was a great jurist with great solutions to many cases. Second rule of the law of the quotations. You can quote other jurists. But they have to be quoted in turn by the other 5 names. I explain. If you want to quote Salvius Iulianus, you could quote Salvius Iulianus. But Salvius Iulianus must be quoted in turn by Papinianus. I take a quotation by Papinianus, and Papinianus in the quotation, okay, but here Salvius Iulianus has written that something. Or there is the possibility to bring the books directly. Now you understand. Now you understand the sense of this law of the quotation. Because the problem, which is the problem? The problem is that in this period, it was quite impossible for the judge to check the quotation. Have you understood the problem? there is a trial. There is a trial. We go in front of the governor, to the court. We have a legal problem. We have to solve this problem. The way to solve this problem is to quote something coming from the past. For example, Papinianus. But how is it possible for the judge to check if the text of Papinianus is correct? How is it possible? I need the book. I need the material book. This was possible just with these 5 names, because these 5 names have produced very important works spread everywhere into the empire. So it was possible every time to check the book of Papinianus, the book of Ulpianus, the book of Gaius, of course, because Gaius has written the Institutiones, so it was possible. It was not possible to check Florentinus, for example. Florentinus, belonging to the Antonine period, was disappeared in this period, quite disappeared. So if I quote Florentinus, I need to bring the book in order to check. Have you understood the problem? It is a barbarian situation. It is a barbarian situation, because we have the possibility just to check and to solve the problem using just 5 names, the works belonging to these 5 names, or the other but quoted in turn. This is very important to understand Justinian. Now you are starting to understand the problem of the Jura. West side of the empire, east side of the empire. Same years, 434, Theodosius II had another idea: to make a code. A codification. So a collection of laws, imperial constitutions, but also of Jura. This is the starting idea. It was not possible to realize this idea. In fact, the Codex Theodosianus, 438-39, is made just by constitutions, not with Jura too. It was not possible at that time because it was so difficult maybe to organize a collection of Jura, of this material coming from the Jurisprudence. But he had the idea. We jump to the period of Justinian. I've told you, 527. Okay? A century after. Immediately when he took the power, he wanted to issue a collection of Jura and leges. Or better, he started with the leges, with the imperial constitutions. Because thinking about imperial constitutions was more simple. Because in the past, in late antiquity, we have other example of codification. Especially we have the Codex Theodosianus. So immediately after 1 year, in 28, he gave the order to create a codex, Codex Justinianus, a collection of imperial constitutions, starting from Hadrian. The Codex Theodosianus started since Constantine, because Constantine was the first Christian emperor, and so on. And we have, in 1 year, we have the creation of this Codex Justinianus. So 1 year, 12 books, a lot of constitutions, and we have this creation in 1 year. But you have understood that there is the problem still of the Jura, the material coming from the Jurisprudence. And this is the real problem. This is the real problem. So Justinian, with a constitution Deo Auctore in 530, gave the order to Tribonian, his minister of justice, to start the creation of the digesta. Digesta is the collection of the Jura. The collection of the Jura. And it was possible in 3 years to close the digesta. 50 books, a lot of Jura. But the composition, the history of the composition of the digesta is very complicated. It's very complex. Because you have to imagine Tribonianus and his commission. He had 14 members. There were 15 members. So a big commission and 3 sub-commissions. Reading all the material coming from the past. Okay? Reading all Ulpianus, all Papinianus, all Salvius Julianus, 44 jurists. 44 jurists. No more 5. 44. Why? Because Tribonian was a great collector of books, of legal books. So the library of Tribonian was full of books and was full of scholars coming from the past. Not just Papinianus, Ulpianus, Paulus, Modestinus, and Gaius, of course, but 44. For example, our Salvius Julianus. But, of course, it's impossible to imagine a collection of all this material because are books and books and books and books and books. It's impossible. And so, the idea is to cut. The idea is to cut. To take fragments from the works, fragments considered absolutely important, fragments considered as laws. This is the most important passage, the ideological passage. Okay? I take a book belonging to Ulpianus. Ulpianus is very used into the digesta. I take a book of Ulpianus, written by Ulpianus, about a problem, I don't know, the duties of the governor, for example. I could not take the whole book. I have to take fragments. Most important passages inside the books. How is it possible to do this? Cutting. Fragments. I don't take the book, but I take fragments. And we have thousands of fragments belonging to these works coming from the past, especially coming from the Severian dynasty, the period of the Severian dynasty, but not only. And we have the creation of the digesta. I don't know if you have opened in your life the digesta, probably not. But it's very interesting, because if you open the digesta, pay attention, because we are very lucky. Because we have the manuscript, the original manuscript of the digesta, not really the original, but a manuscript really, really well done of the digesta, and probably really close to the original one. and it is in Italy, it is in Florence, and the manuscript has a very interesting history because it was stolen from Constantinople by Italians, and he was kept in Amalfi, a city in the south Italy, then in Pisa, because Pisa won on Amalfi. They took the manuscript, they brought the manuscript in Pisa, and after Florence won the war against Pisa, and now the manuscript is in Florence, and the manuscript is fantastic. Is belonging to the period of Justinian. So we are very, very lucky, because, for example, for the Codex, the situation is different. We have not manuscripts exactly containing the Codex. The Codex was rebuilt. Okay? So is it possible to study very, very well the Digesta? And if you open the Digesta, is divided in 50 books, and the books are divided in titles, tituli. If you see one title concerning something, marriage, for example, you can see all the fragments. A fragment, for example, belonging to Ulpian, the second fragment belonging to Papinianus, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it's a collection of fragments. And these fragments are considered as laws, as constitutions. Now, which is the order of the fragments? I don't want to waste a lot of time about this problem, but it's important just to understand that, for example, we have the preservation of the name of the jurist. So we know the author of each fragment. This is important. And probably this was a decision made by Tribonian, not by Justinian. Because is it possible to make a collection of fragments without the name of the author? We have a fragment belonging to Ulpian, but we are not interested in know that the fragment is belonging to Ulpian. I'm interested just in the fragment, in the rule given by the fragment. Why to write also the origin of the fragment, Ulpian, and not just the name of the author, but also the place where the fragment was taken. So, for example, in this way, we are able to reconstruct, in part, the original work. Have you understood? This is very, very interesting, very important, because it is an ideological decision. The decision to preserve the name of the jurist and the place where the fragment was taken. So, if you open this page of the Digesta, and you see the fragments, you have jurists speaking together in the same page, belonging to different periods of Roman history. Florentinus, Savius Julianus, Ulpian, Hermogenianus, late antiquity. We could have also jurists belonging to the period of the Republic. So before the empire, you can imagine, for centuries before, is an ideological operation to put all together. And it is typical of the mind of Justinian, because we have we have a topic, for example, marriage, and we have to put the rules on marriage. When is it possible to have the marriage? Conditions, and so on. A lot of topics. So we need rule. We have the constitutions, but we have also the jura. And now we have the fragments. And the fragments are coming from different jurists. and the different jurists are coming from different periods of Roman history. So in the Digesta, you have all the history of Roman law. And pay attention that the material not preserved into the Digesta is disappeared forever. Have you understood this? It's like, I don't know in English, the Noah Arch. Is correct.
Nueva barca.
Nueva barca. The animal on the arch survived. The other disappeared. So you can imagine that we have quite nothing except the Digesta concerning Roman jurists. Imagine that we have probably 3 or 4 papyri with 3 or 4 lines belonging to Ulpian outside the Digesta. So everything we know about jurists is in the Digesta. Outside the Digesta is nothing. Have you understood? Another important ideological decision: what to save and what to destroy forever. Because really we don't have nothing outside the Digesta. Really. Justinian ordered the destruction, to destroy all the books, because he put the sigillum, the hand, on the Digesta. This is the Roman law. Outside, nothing. This is the new Roman law. Outside, nothing. So, you can understand how how can I say, the will of Justinian is impressive. It's impressive concerning Roman law. We have the Digesta. After 3 years, we have the new edition of the code. Why? Because we have the Digesta. So the first code, it is no more useful, because during these 3 years, Justinian created the Digesta. We need another edition of the code. In fact, we have the second edition of the code. The Codex Repetite Preleziones. We don't have the first edition of the code. It's disappeared. We have just the reconstruction of the second edition. And it is very, very interesting that we have some fragments of belonging to the first code. And in one of these fragments, there is a list of the topic contained in the first code. And in this list, there is the law of the quotation. We know that in the first code, Justinian decided to preserve the law of the quotation. So the problem of the Jura was still organized in the old way in the first code. In the second code, no, because now we have the Digesta. And in Justinian's mind, he has solved the problem of the Jura. Then we have the third composition of the Corpus Iuris, the institutions. The institutions are similar to the institutions composed by Gaius, 4 books, and it is a text handbook useful for the students. Okay. The Corpus Iuris is closed in 534. Is closed. 3 parts. Okay? Codex, second codex, Digesta, institutions. Byzantine law. But what is it? This Byzantine? Because we have this Corpus Iuris, we have Roman law. The problem of the language. We are in Constantinople. We are in the east part of the empire. Which is the language spoken by people? Latin or Greek? Greek. But the compilation is in Latin. Now, Digesta. The Digesta is in Latin. Why not in Greek? Yes, because it's a collection of all the material belonging to the Iuris of the past, coming from the past. They were written in Greek, except Modestinus. They were written in Greek, they were written in Latin, so of course the digesta is in Latin. Because a translation is not into the imagination, the possibility of a translation. Codex. With the codex, we have some problems more, because it is true that this is a collection of constitution coming from the past, so written in Latin. It is true, but it is also true that some constitutions are issued by Justinian, and we know that were issued in Latin and in Greek. But again, the codex is in Latin. It is not a small problem, pay attention, because the students were Greek-speaking, not Latin-speaking, okay? It's the same case that we study on German books, okay? Institutions, the instituciones. Now we have a problem, because the institutions are written in that moment. In that moment. So why in Latin and not in Greek? Excuse me, the students are Greek-speaking. Why? Also the institutions in Latin. And this is an ideological decision. Because the Latin was the language of the Romanitas, was the language of Rome, was the language of the state, was the language of the idea of the empire, of the reconstruction of the Roman Empire, and so on. And it was an instrument in order to study the digesta and the codex in Latin. Okay. Into a constitution, the issuing constitution of the digesta, a bilingual constitution, tanta dedocen, here 533, I will show you. This is the text. In Latin, this is a section of the Constitution. With this Constitution was issued the digesta. And we have a section of the Constitution in Latin and in Greek, because it was bilingual, probably written before in Greek and then translated in Latin. Tanta, Latin, dedocen, Greek. Here we have in Latin a very interesting section, because audeat, you could see, commentarios isdem legibus ad nectere. Commentarios ad nectere. It is a ban, it is forbidden. Commentarios ad nectere. What is it, this commentarios? Commentaries, we say. Annotations, commentaries. Something written. Something written. To explain. Explanations, something written more concerning the text of the digesta. It's forbidden. It's forbidden because in the mind of Justinian, this digesta is like a Bible. It's impossible to add nothing. This is the definitive Roman law. I have solved the problem of the Jura and the Leges. This is the solution. So it's forbidden to add commentaries. The Greek text is different, because the commentarios, it is not the Greek word, is paragraphe. Paragraphe. Anzi, better, paratitlon. You see? Paratitla. Paratitla. Paratitlon, single, plural paratitlon. It is not commentarios. It is paratitla. It's different. The meaning is different. The meaning is different. Paratitla, it is not something, an explanation, a commentary, for example, written in another sheet of paper, in another place. I have the digesta here. I study the digesta. I write a commentarios here. Okay? Explanations here. No. Paratitla is different. Paratitla is something written on the text of the digesta. On the text of the digesta. Understood? So, with the paratitla, I'm doing something on the text. I'm changing something on the text because I'm writing something on the digesta, on the manuscripts of the digesta. It's different.
So essentially a glossa?
Essentially is a glossa. Essentially is a glossa. In this way, with the paratitla, I'm changing the text of the digesta. I'm not doing simply a commentarios, a commentary, a study. But I'm changing the Bible of the law, the legal Bible. I'm changing the legal Bible. And we are starting to enter in Byzantine law, because Byzantine law is the relation of Byzantine people, of the contemporary people of Justinian, with the Corpus Iuris. I've given the title of my lesson today, On the Shoulder of the Giants. Okay? On the shoulder of the giants. Byzantine are on the shoulder of the Corpus Iuris. Or better, the Corpus Iuris is put on their shoulder. Because the Byzantines has this big heritage on their shoulders, the Corpus Iuris. Very difficult to be used. I make you an example. We have spoken about the institutions. The institutions is a book, an handbook for the students. Okay? Written in Latin, written in Latin. So written in another language, because they were Greek-speaking. And not just Greek-speaking, because, for example, if they come from Antiochia or from Alexandria, they were Coptic-speaking as first, or Syriac-speaking as first. So Greek was the second language, and Latin was the third language. We have the institutions. The authors of the institutions are four professors. Especially, we remember two professors, Theophilus and Dorotheus. Then we have also Cratinus and Anatolius. Theophilus and Dorotheus. Theophilus was belonging to the school of Constantinople. Dorotheus was belonging to the school of Berytus, now Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. They were the author of the institution in Latin. They were Greek-speaking too. After 1 year, the issue of the institutions, we have the paraphrases by Theophilus. We have another work, the paraphrases of Theophilus, written by Theophilus, or written by a student, an helper of Theophilus, but we consider the author Theophilus. The institutions, I have not shared the book of the institutions, but the institutions are so. The paraphrases is so. It's more than the double. And it is in Greek. It is in Greek. The paraphrases by Theophilus is in Greek. This is the starting point of Byzantine law. Why? Because in these paraphrases, there are not just the institutions, but there is something more, of course. It's the double. And what there is in the paraphrases? Byzantine culture, Byzantine legal culture of that years. Because the idea of Justinian to close the box of Roman law was a dream. It is a dream. Because I have to use the Corpus Iuris in real courts in contemporary period, I have to teach this Corpus Iuris to the students, Greek speaking. And so Byzantine law is a kind of relation starting immediately with the Corpus Iuris. The Corpus Iuris heritage coming from the past, a collection of materials coming from the past, from the Roman legal history, but used in that contemporary age and for the future. Because Roman, I told you, Byzantine Empire is going to live for 1 millennium. You know that Constantinople fell in 1453, okay? During the Ottoman war and so on. So you can imagine how it's possible to use the Corpus Iuris during the time of the Isaurian dynasty, Macedonian dynasty, Paleologan dynasty, and Komnenian, and so on and so on. So after centuries. It is a continuous relation. We have time.
We're flexible, as long as the audience has the attention.
Okay. If you are not destroyed by my English and by Byzantine law, we could go a little bit further just to understand something better. We have two moments, relevant moments in the history of Byzantine law. The period of or better, we go directly to the Macedonian time. And then I will explain you this, this schematization. It's interesting and useful. Normally I start with my students. I start with this kind of schematization. After the Justinian compilation, we have a period immediately. We have a period belonging to some jurists. The task of this jurist was to study and to elaborate the Corpus Iuris. 2 generations of jurists, the antecessores and the scholasticoi. Antecessores is the antecessores were professors into the University of Constantinople normally, because Berytus, the other university, was destroyed by an earthquake. So we have just Constantinople. The antecessores, Latin term. Then immediately, the generation after, the scholasticoi, Greek term. And the scholasticoi were especially lawyers. So professors, theory, lawyers, practice. These 2 generations of jurists had the task to work on the Corpus Iuris. Translations, explications, adnotations, all the thing that Justinian has forbidden to do. Okay? But it was necessary to use the Corpus Iuris in real life. Then we have the period of the Isaurian dynasty. We jump the Isaurian dynasty, we go to the Macedonian dynasty. Why the Macedonian dynasty is important? Because during the Macedonian dynasty, Leo VI, we have the composition of another big work similar to the Corpus Iuris, the Basilica. Basilica is the things belonging to the emperor. This is the translation, literary translation. But the Basilica in Greek, finally in Greek, the Basilica are not the translations of the Corpus Iuris, but are something something more or something different. If you take the Basilica and you want to find the translation, the simple translation of the Corpus Iuris, no. This is not a translation. And what is it, the Basilica? And now I will explain you the schematization. Because you see, on the top, you see leges and iura. In the leges, we have the Codex Theodosianus, we have the imperial constitutions, and in the iura, we have the responsa, so the material, especially the material coming from the Jurisprudence, and the edictum of the praetor, and other material belonging to the period of the Republic. You see, all this material, iura, is going to the digesta. We have seen this kind of operation. All the material coming from the leges is going to the codex. So, iura and leges, digesta, codex. I forgot to tell you about the novelle. There is also a fourth part of the outside the Corpus Iuris. Is the novelle, the constitutions issued by Justinian after the second codex, but this is not so important. It's a Greek tradition of 168 novelle and so on. The important is this situation. This is a very complex situation, because this is the situation immediately after the Corpus Iuris. Immediately. So, the antecessores and the scholasticoi. The paraphrasis by Theophilos is in this line. So, here we have a lot of works in Greek trying to elaborate the Corpus Iuris. I've told you, we have, for example, Dorotheus has written a translation of the Digesta. We don't have these works, We don't have these works. But we know that they existed. And now I will explain why we know. Here we have Stephanos. Stephanos has composed an index, so a kind of commentary. We have the Summa, we have Cyrillus. Also Cyrillus has written a Summa, so a reorganization, a summarization, a summary. So, a lot of works. All these works, material coming from these works, went into the Basilica. So the Basilica, it is not a translation of the Corpus Iuris, but it is a collection of material coming from this line, from the second line. Okay? For this reason, the Basilica are very complex, very, very complex to be understood and so on. Then the Basilica were commented in turn with the addition of other materials and so on, and we arrive to this commentary. But I don't want to give you a lot of information, a lot of difficult information. My idea for this evening is just to give you an idea. My task, my purpose is to give you an idea of Byzantine law and to give you to give you a sort of interest in this topic, in this subject, especially for us, because I also study this kind of history, of legal history. For us, it's important because the Byzantine law is how can I say, sources belonging to Byzantine law went into the composition and the composition of the medieval Slavic law. Okay, for example, in Serbia, we have two channels of penetration, of diffusion of Byzantine sources. The Nomocanon by Saint Sava, so the Ecloga, Prochiron, the Isagoge. I've not told you about these sources, but they are belonging to the Isaurian and to the Macedonian period, and the Zaconic Stephanodoucian. In the Zaconic, you know that the Zaconic is divided in three parts: the real Zaconic, the Lex Justiniani, and the Syntagma Alphabeticum by Matteo Blastares. Anyway, we have the penetration of Byzantine sources in Serbia through these two channels. So it's very interesting for us. We have a similar situation in Russia. We have a similar situation in Bulgaria, with the Ecloge, for example, especially. So it's very, very interesting, especially for us in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, this is the way of penetration of Roman law in Eastern Europe between through this Byzantine channel. Okay. If you have some questions, you can now you can destroy me. You can destroy me if you have some questions. Maybe I could just add an idea. It's important for us that we are jurists. So the idea of the relation with a big codification, with a big source, with a big code. This is the problem of the Byzantines. A confrontation with the Corpus Iuris. This kind of relation is important also for us in contemporary time, because we have always the confrontation with the law, with a Corpus Iuris, with a Corpus, not with the Corpus, but with a Corpus Iuris. Okay? And the Corpus Iuris must be used now. It's coming from the past, but we have to use now and in the future. Okay? So this is the sense of study legal history in a law faculty. Otherwise, it is unuseful. Yeah, I'm not interested in give information about Justinian and so on, but the idea to think in a historical sense. This is very important. This is very important. Okay. Otherwise, you are not a jurist. Otherwise, you are a technically speaking, but you are not a real jurist. Able to understand and to criticize. Okay, this is important. So love history, love legal history.
Bravo.
Thank you, Valerio. So now we have the chance to ask questions.
Yes.
If someone is unsure of their English, you can ask in Serbian, and maybe Valerio will understand. And
I don't know, but I will try.
And I'll just open the chat because I think we also have some questions in chat, since unfortunately we weren't able to get the sound from our online participants to work. So let me just fix that, and please, the people in the room have priority if you have questions.
Let's just close this. So let's see. Chat. So we do have. So want me to read them out?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to stay here? Stay here. Stay here.
Šta nešto?
Oh.
Sada evo, imamo dvojicu kolega. Mislim da se prvi javio ili sam ja barem videla prvog.
So we'll take the questions from the room first, and then we will answer the questions in the chat as well, so stay tuned. Just please, everyone in the room, turn on the microphones when speaking so that people online could hear you as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to ask on English. I was confused about So my question is there any difference between Jura Controversum and Jura Civile, Jus Civile? Or we can Jus Civile, Jura Civilis. Yeah. Or we can say it's the same thing, synonym. Okay, thank you.
Question first, or do you want to?
Yes, I could answer immediately.
Just turn on the microphone.
Yes,
they
of
don't
course.
hear you online.
I could answer immediately. The Jus Controversum is something coming from the Jus Civile. Okay, we have two big masses of sources coming from the past. Jus Civile. Jus Civile is the archaic. It's the archaic Roman law, coming from the 12 tables, for example. Very strict, very strict, very belonging to the Roman citizenship. Then we have the Jus Honorarium. We have the law created by the praetor in order to destroy the Jus Civile, in order to use the Jus Civile with the foreigners, with the peregrini. This is the heritage. The heritage across the time became Jus Controversum. Okay? With the addiction of the material, the responsa, the material coming from the jurists, the answer given by the jurists across the time, the Jus became Controversum. Already in the time of Julius Caesar, already in the time of August, for example, August invented tried to solve the problem of Jus Controversum. So it is an old problem. It is an old problem, Jus Controversum, arrived at a certain point, arriving to the late antiquity. Okay?
You mentioned that the Corpus Iuris Civilis was written in Latin, despite that the jurists of the time were mainly speaking in Greek. So I have to ask, was there ever a point in Byzantine history that Greek became the predominantly used language in a legal setting? And if yes, when? And were there some specific events that led to it, or was it just a linguistic drift that led to Greek becoming the more used language?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this question. It's very interesting, and it is complex. So I will try just to say something. At the time of the Corpus Iuris, at the time of Justinian, in the eastern part of the empire, they were quite totally Greek-speaking, okay? But Latin was the language of the bureaucracy, was the language of the army, for example. The orders during the war, they were given in Latin, for example, okay? Go ahead, stop, and so on. But the students were Greek-speaking. This is the main point. This is the main point. The turning point probably was under Mauritius and under Heraclius. So Heraclius, we are in 614. So 15 years, 60 years after Justinian. Justinian died in 575. Heraclius is 614, so 40 years. 40 years. Under Heraclius and Mauritius, the empire is totally Greek-speaking. Totally Greek-speaking. We know this. We know this because if you think about the the second line of the schematization, in the passage between the antecessore and the scholasticoi. The scholasticoi started to translate also the words normally in Latin, normally given in Latin. So it was in 20, 30, 40 years was impossible to understand nothing in Latin. Okay? It's complex. I could give examples concerning especially the relation between the antecessores and the scholasticoi, but we need time. Sorry.
Thank you.
But for example, in the manuscripts, we have Latin term with Greek desinences. You understand? We have the main term, the root of the name, the root of the term in Latin, and the addiction of the second part in Greek, for example.
Go ahead. Just turn the microphone.
I have a question. Are there any historical evidence of how the new conquered territories, the people that lived there, how did they accepted the laws because they were in Latin and not everybody spoke in Latin? How long it took for people?
I've not perfectly understood.
About
the conquest of territories.
Yeah.
When? During Justinian or?
Justinian.
We have a great wars during Justinian, with Armenia, with Lazica, with Iberia and Caucasus. We have the war against Vandals in Carthage in Africa, and we have the big war against Goths in Italy. 30 years war, a terrible war. But they were Latin speaking, of course, in Italy. Of course, they were Latin speaking, and this is also someone has told that this is one of the reasons because the Corpus Iuris was written or was preserved in Latin, because the idea was to give the Corpus Iuris to the reconquered Italy. I have answered, or I have not understood, or. Of course, the new territories were Latin speaking. They were Latin speaking, and
yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, now we have quite a lot of questions in the chat. I'm sorry we couldn't let the people ask them orally, but let's read it out. So our first question, very long, you might want to look at it too. What is your opinion on the impact of Constitutio Antoniniana on the Roman world from the 4th century onwards? The only copy of the Constitutio Antoniniana is the one from Gissen, Papyrus Gissensis, but we find about it only in the Digesta 1517 and 161, as well as in the Justinianus Novellae, where it was briefly mentioned. Do you think that Eastern Roman or Western Roman Empire accepted the Constitutio Antoniniana on the global scale only after the Digesta was issued? Because, as you said, the Digest was the Bible of the law of that time, and it was really well codified.
Yes, very interesting. Just few words about, what is it, the Constitutio Antoniniana 212. By Antoninus Caracalla, the Roman citizenship was given to the entire empire. So from this point, we have no foreigners. All the inhabitants of the empire are Roman citizens. But the problem is that for us it's very important, the Constitution Antoniniana, for us, scholars. But probably for the Romans in that moment, it was not so important, because it was something still happening. I mean, the use of Roman law, because if I give you the Roman citizenship, I give you the use of the Roman law, of course. The use of the Roman law probably was already given, and the Roman law was already used also in the provinces, and we have sources concerning this. For example, we have materials coming from Palestine, and especially from Palestine, for Mesopotamia, for example, where we see that they, in province, that used Roman law even if they were not Roman citizens. Because why? Because Roman law was something sure. Something sure. If I want to make a contract, it's better to do the contract with Roman law, because Roma is the power, is the political power. Okay, so okay, I'm not Roman citizen, but it's better too. I'm not sure if I answered to the question. Yes, and the Constitution Triniana is also preserved in the digesta. I don't remember the passage of the digesta really, but
okay. Now we have another question from the same colleague, much shorter, but in Italian. Quanto è stata grande l'influenza di digesta sullo sviluppo del diritto canonico?
Oh, mamma mia! Probably it's better to go to it. Sorry. With the colleague, yes, this is a very, very big question. Probably the most important influence is something ideological. The concept of that it is useful, it is necessary to collect the material coming from the past, and to collect the decisions, and to collect the decisions coming from the popes. So it's better to bound the problem of the ius canonicum. It's better to bound the ius canonicum with the codex than with the digesta, because the codex is a collection of laws. The digesta is a collection of iura, and the problem of the iura in canonical law is very, very, very complex.
Okay, now we have two short questions from Anastasia Milicevic. What influence did John of Cappadocia have on Justinian's codification, and did glosses also exist in biblical manuscripts?
Yes, yes, of course, glosses are present in biblical manuscript, of course, but it is not our subject, so I cannot answer. And of course, yes. In fact, there is also the problem of to find the real text of Bible, the canonical text of Bible. Influenced by John of Cappadocia, yes, we know, we are quite sure that at a certain point Tribonianus died, probably by pest, and in 42, if I remember, or in 46, 46 probably. And after 46, we have the influence of John of Cappadocia. And John of Cappadocia was totally Greek-speaking. And in fact, the novelle are written normally in Greek. Yes. This is an influence, but not just in the language, but also an influence in the state of mind, because it was a great administrator of the empire and so on.
And now we have three more questions from Veljko Jovanovic. The first is, how did Justinian remove the ambiguities between the digest and the institutions? The second, I'm not quite sure whether I understand it, with regard to the many books from which the digest was made, which was the solution to the volume of the digest? Perhaps which one occupied the greatest percentage of its volume, not sure. And the final, what are the most important parts of the Corpus Iuris?
I will answer to the first question, because it's very interesting, and it is concerning the relations inside the Corpus Iuris, so between the institution digesta and codex, and this kind of relation is Justinian tried to solve the problems between the three parts of the Corpus Iuris, but it was impossible. It was quite impossible. It was a dream. And so we have many, how can I say, problematic points between the three parts composing the Corpus Iuris. In order to solve this problem, Justinian ordered to make some intervention on the fragments, to change something into the fragments. But this is really a very big topic. I think
for the next
the
time.
students, it's better
Valerio,
to leave the students to go home to their families and to eat something also this evening. No, really, thank you so much for your presence. I was really happy to be here. And please, for the next years, go to the new course of Byzantine law that my colleagues have founded and established here in the Pravdin faculty. Probably I will come also to teach something.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Valerio. Just a brief information for the students regarding next week. I'll switch to Serbian so there are no misunderstandings. Sljedeće nedelje je predavanje samo online. Imamo jednog ruskog profesora koji će govoriti o ruskom srednjovekovnom pravu, o dokazivanju, o svedočenju, ali neće biti, dakle, uživo. Biće samo preko Webexa i biće u sredu, ne u petak, jer smo računali petak uveče 29. To je već svima početak nove godine, tako da računajte.
Petak je understood.
Poslednje predavanje na forumu, sledeća sreda u 7 preko Webexa. Sad ćemo se to dogovoriti.